every time Ron DeSantis tweets or is at a press conference, he is really just being like, Papa, can you hear me? I mean, it's like he's just Trump, do you see me? Tucker, do you see me? It is disgusting. It is becoming nearly impossible to say that the deaths in their state, they are not responsible for.
Okay, a lot of news today. In your state of New York, Alyssa, Andrew Cuomo did us the courtesy of resigning on a Tuesday and not a Wednesday after we recorded so that we were able to talk about his resignation, which I thought was really nice of him.
I mean, appreciate.
Can you talk a little bit about what the attitude has been in New York over the last week since that bombshell AG report came out implicating Andrew Cuomo in sexually harassing 11 women? Can you talk a little bit about what the attitude has been there and what the reaction has been among your friends and neighbors now that he's announced he's resigning?
Oh, let me just tell you, amongst my friends and neighbors, the texts were a-flying yesterday because, well, it was, I don't know if it was supposed to be some sort of like fake out, but his personal attorney did this very long, infuriating press conference prior to his press conference where she went account by account and tried to discredit all of the women who had come forward and tried to, for all intents and purposes, say that it was in fact the governor, Erin, who was the victim. And so after that, which I listened to the entire time I was in the car, when I came home in time to watch his press conference, because I'm a fucking nerd, I was like, oh, I got to get home, got to see what's going on. I did not anticipate, it was kind of like I was listening to it and he's going on. And then he starts talking about being victimized, about how he wants to fight. And I was like, okay, he's not stepping down. And then he was like, but I love New York and the government has to work. I was like, hell no. My neighbors start texting me, hell no. We're watching this too. Is he really going to do it? Now, there's an interesting thing that's among New York political Twitter this morning is that the governor hasn't issued a letter or anything formal saying that he's stepping down. So people are definitely waiting for that. But, essentially, this is a man who has bullied most of the elected officials in this state for his entire political career, which is his whole life. And I think that even months ago, back in March when this really sort of was like, okay, guy, you've got all these problems. And he was like, I asked for an investigation because he wanted to buy himself some time. And, I think that yesterday, like a burden was lifted off of all of these elected officials who had been abused and threatened and targeted for potentially their whole lives, but at least the last couple of months, because now they know that they're free. That they can go ahead. I mean, he was known for his retribution. If you didn't support him, he'd try to silence you in the New York State Assembly. He's not a good person, Erin. And I think that people today are breathing a sigh of relief. I also think that it helped the further we get away from Trump, because back when, especially the nursing home scandal, where they said the governor did hide deaths that had actually occurred in nursing homes. People said, well, his defender said, well, he did it because Trump was trying to target him. And as a New Yorker, it's kind of hard. You did have to root for Andrew Cuomo during COVID because it was helping you, it was helping us. He was fighting for New Yorkers. But then, I think that the further we got away from Trump, the more people were like, oh, wait a minute. What the fuck? None of this is normal. Jesus Christ, we've been so fucked up seeing such a lunatic be the president of the United States that we thought that this wasn't actually that bad. And so months ago, there was a poll asking New Yorkers whether or not they thought Cuomo should be impeached or step down. And the number was something like between 25 and 30%. And the poll recently is more like 60%. So I'm saying that New Yorkers are breathing a sigh of relief today.
Well, that's good. And I will say, at the risk of sounding like too coastal centric, let's take a step back. There are 20 million people in New York. There are 40 million people in California. That's a lot of people in the U.S. live in one of those two states. So the thing about Cuomo being in charge of one of the biggest states in the country was his being a bully was an open secret among people who are elected officials in the state of New York. It was also an open secret among members of the press. There are people that covered him that knew that he was a vindictive, jerk who was known to call reporters up and scream at them on the phone.
Yep.
He was known to pretend that he didn't want to talk to somebody and then call them up to give them a surprise interview with no time to prepare for it. He was just a lot of people lived in fear of him. And it's a kind of ding dong, the witch is dead moment for a lot of people in the state of New York. And I hope that his replacement, Kathy Hochul, can accomplish what she needs to accomplish coming out under the cloud of that. I do have a question about, and I don't know if you can answer this question because I don't think it's definitely not your job, but why is New York like the Illinois of sex pests? Like there are so many, just a long line of sex pests in the governor's office. And before Tish James or Barbara Underwood, there were sex pests in the AG's office. What is up with the New Yorkers and the sex pests, Alyssa?
Well, Erin, is someone who loves getting rid of pests humanely. I don't really know why they're attracted to this state, but they are kind of everywhere.
I feel like we should maybe let women run shit before men completely disqualify themselves for being sex pests.
It's true. It's true.
But, here we are. I want to pivot real quick because we're going to talk more about Cuomo and the culture around Andrew Cuomo in the next part of our conversation. I want to talk about COVID, and I specifically want to talk about COVID from the perspective of parents who are about to send their kids back to school if they haven't already, and teachers who have to go back to school, especially in states where it appears that the governors are in like this weird dick measuring contest to see who can endanger the children the most. In Florida, Governor Ron DeSantis released an executive order banning masking within Florida schools, even though his children go to a private school where masking is required. Should be noted.
Totally.
Should be noted, as do Ted Cruz's kids. They go to a private school where masking is required. But I don't know. I guess it doesn't matter if their kids are free. Everyone else's kids need to be free to die. Live free and die is what the flag says. So Ron DeSantis is doing his darndest to make sure that no schools that his kids don't personally attend are able to require masking mandates. But a couple school districts are openly defying him. Alyssa, what do you make of those schools, and how do you think Ron DeSantis is going to come out on the other side of all of this?
Do you mean the school districts that are following science and reading the news and paying attention to the spikes in their neighborhoods and their
schools
communities?
Doing reading, writing, and arithmetic and putting it into practice?
And they're saying, you know what? 1 + 1 = fucking 2 and nothing else. And what we've learned in the past year is that if you can't be vaccinated, which kids under 12 still cannot be, the best thing you can do to keep yourself from being sick is wearing a mask. And apparently this is offensive to the governors of Florida and Texas.
Yeah, let's talk about Texas too, because Texas Governor Greg Abbott has banned masking mandates in school, and now he faces a lawsuit over that. It's we'll see how that all plays out. But while he has banned mask mandates in schools and localities, he has also requested out-of-state aid from nurses and healthcare workers. Alyssa, if you were a nurse or a healthcare worker, would you go help Greg Abbott right now?
Here's the problem, Erin. If I were a nurse or healthcare worker, I'd be like, shit, they really need me. Look at that bitch that can't govern their state. That's the problem. It's amazing, too, that they don't even listen to a fellow Republican governor, also in a state that's surging, Asa Hutchinson, who's like, shit, I wish I wouldn't have been a dick about masks back in the day because people are really fucking sick now. So, it feels like, I guess it feels like the death of their constituents doesn't scare them or make them sad.
Do you think that there are any governors left who are true believers that COVID is a hoax or that vaccines don't work? Or do you think that they're all just saying this in order to get their base all frothed up and get themselves on Fox News, and they don't really have any regard for the cost of it?
It's like every time Ron DeSantis tweets or is at a press conference, he is really just being like, Papa, can you hear me? It's like he's just, Trump, do you see me? Tucker, do you see me? It is disgusting. It is becoming nearly impossible to say that the deaths in their state they are not responsible for.
Yeah, they're directly responsible for it. We have gotten pretty angry at people who are anti-vax, who are spreading misinformation and disinformation and stubbornly refusing to get vaccinated despite having access to all the information necessary to determine that it is safe, despite the fact that they know that they're endangering people around them. We've been pretty harsh on people who've chosen not to get vaccinated, but I think the architects of their reasoning deserve much more concentrated volcanic ire than the individuals who choose not to get vaccinated. And that is like Governor Greg Abbott, Governor Ron DeSantis, Governor Kristi Noem, who is standing in the back being like, hey, look,
do you see me? Do you see me?
Yeah,
I'm a real bitch who can't govern.
Yeah. Well, it's also like, South Dakota, what is it? Like 1/8 or 1/20th of a Texas? Like, yeah. I guess I give 1/20th as much of a shit about South Dakotans as I do Texans based on sheer numbers. And the fact that there are fewer cities in South Dakota where people are forced to be really close together. But yeah, all of them really suck and have no regard for the safety of people in their state. Do you think that voters will have a long memory for this once this is, I talk about once this is past us, but like, why am I assuming that we're ever going to get past this at this point? But do you think like a year or two from now, voters will have forgotten enough about what DeSantis did, what Abbott did, what Kristi Noem did, that they won't hold it against those people when they try for a higher office, which we know they're all inevitably going to do?
I mean, the people whose primaries they need to win, I'm not sure. I really don't know. It makes me so sad. But I just, the thing that is a thread through all the stories right now are the anti-vaxxers who said, it was all misinformation. It was all misinformation, that we got. And that's why we didn't get vaxxed. And now my husband's dead. And, I think it's a sad state of affairs that the only way to convince some people that this is real is that it has to happen to them. Mm-hmm. And so if that's the truth of where we are, then I think maybe the people to whom it happened may remember, will have a long memory, but other folks will still continue to be like, it's the flu. It's not real. I never got sick, right. Which is a real vibe.
Right. It's the as a father of daughters mentality where
totally.
Like Republicans only care about things that impact women if they personally have daughters or, they talk about their personal tie to it. And it's like, other people are people too. That has been long established that other people are indeed people.
And they were people before your daughter told you not to use homophobic slurs.
Exactly.
Last year.
I almost feel like what we need is some sort of National Oompa Loompa Corps of, listen to this. I came up with this idea and I texted it to you and you didn't respond. And I assumed you were busy with literally anything else because it was the least important thought I've ever had. But I've developed it further, Alyssa.
Do it.
We need a National Oompa Loompa Corps. Groups of people who look and are dressed up like Oompa Loompas who show up to states, who show up to locations where the people responsible for health disasters will be making public appearances. And they should sing Oompa Loompa style songs about how they are suffering the consequences. Yes. Oompa Loompa doobity daxed. Nobody would be dead if they'd all gotten vaxxed.
Okay. I would have remembered that text. I'm going to have to check my phone because that is genius.
Right. And so, we just need people. We need a national corps of Oompa Loompas who go around to people like Kristi Noem, Governor Abbott, and Ron DeSantis and just rub it in a way that is both humiliating and entertaining for all of us.
Oh my God, I'm crying. I'm picturing myself as the conductor of the Oompa Loompa choir. It feels so right.
I think it would be great. I mean, I think that there is a real amnesia around cause and effect here. Like in 2024, when Ron DeSantis and Greg Abbott and Kristi Noem are running for the Republican nomination for president, they are going to act as though the problems that this country is currently facing aren't partly due to decisions they made as the top official in their state when they were governors. And we just need an Oompa Loompa Corps to remind people. Alyssa's dancing.
Because, come on. I was made for this.
I think I agree. I think that would be great. Let's move on to toasts and roasts. I think we have one toast.
I have a toast.
Okay, I would love to hear your toast.
Okay, my toast is to Lucille Ball, who in 1964 did a radio show called Let's Talk to Lucy. And it hasn't been heard since 1964. And her daughter, Lucie Arnaz, released it. It's both a podcast that I think you can find wherever you find podcasts, and it's on Sirius Channel 104. It has given me such fucking joy. The trailer is what got me. Okay, Erin, I didn't even do this on purpose, but I mean, my Lucy book has been with me since the 6th grade. I love Lucy.
Aww.
The real life of Lucille Ball. I have always loved her. And the part that got me is that in the trailer of the original radio show, she says, what you hear from me is always scripted. And I get all of these questions and letters from people. And I thought it would be interesting for you to know what I really think about things. And now look, some of the episodes are hella fucking dated. You know, the one about wearing pants. I was like, I'm going to skip this one.
Wait, is there like a pants debate? Is like, should you or shouldn't you?
Okay, so it is actually actress Arlene Dahl who had written a book. See, I think this is so cool because it's still history. She had written a book called Ask a Man, which was like, ask a man what he wants from women. And one of the biggest turnoffs in 1964 was when women wore pants. But the best is, I mean, anyone who knows Lucille Ball knows that her voice is like very specific. And this woman's talking about femininity and how when women wear pants, they cut their hair too short and they start talking with husky low voices. And Lucy was like, but she has like, you know, she has old actor Danny Kaye on, and he talks about how he's going to Hong Kong to learn how to cook. He's like a serious cook, and he was going to Hong Kong for cooking classes. And she's got Barbara Streisand and Bing Crosby and people that you've never heard of. But some of it is like way enlightened for the time. Other episodes are like, you know, pants. But
Yeah.
it's such a fucking delight. And I'm so glad they released it because it's nice to, she's just cool as hell. I mean, she was like the first female head of a studio.
Yeah, Lucille Ball, you know, the existence of Lucille Ball is part of the reason why that recurring conversation about like, are women funny? Can women be funny and beautiful? Why it's so annoying? Because Lucille Ball was in the 50s, beautiful, one of the funniest people in the country, and like super smart. And the fact that we just like develop amnesia around like every new generation of smart, funny women.
Totally.
It's just like, it's very frustrating. Also, I just wanted to comment really quick on Ask a Man as a subject for anything, like women asking men what they find. You don't need to ask them. They will tell you. They will tell you. They will chime in when nobody asked them.
Well, see, this is the funny part about that episode is that it starts out by Arlene Dahl saying that there had been studies done saying, this is in the late 50s, saying that when asked women who they dress for, women said they dress for other women, which we have heard for forever. It was true back then. And she's like, that's crazy. Why would you dress for other women? And then she talks about asking a man, and she literally says, even if he doesn't know the answer, he'll usually tell you something that he thinks is correct. And I was like, I was optimistic. I was like, oh, here we go. And then she's like, don't wear pants.
I will say one thing though. I've developed a theory now that I'm like third trimester, round in the corner to the end. I have developed a new appreciation for like tenty dresses, which I've talked about. And I've also developed a new understanding of maybe why pants were not in favor for a long period of time in human history. Because if you're spending years and years being like pregnant or postpartum, pants are not great. You know, like you don't want to have like a...
Totally. I mean, look, I still have to be careful how I squat and in what I squat.
But that sounds really awesome. And this is like you just like stumbled upon it?
I randomly saw an advertisement for it because I guess this is what I get targeted with, podcasts from the 1960s. But it's fucking delightful. It's great.
That sounds awesome. And I wish I had a long road trip to go on so I could listen to Sirius 104 the entire time. It sounds great. Okay, I have one thing that I think several of us feel petty about. Jeopardy which is a show that used to be on when I would get to my grandparents' house after school, and I don't really watch it anymore. Jeopardy announced its new host. Its new host is Mike Richards. You may ask, in Jeopardy fashion, who is Mike Richards? That's a great question. He looks like, have you ever bought a picture frame and there's like a insert already in the picture frame?
He's favorite of Erin's insults.
He's that, but of people. He is the picture frame insert white man, and he is the new host of Jeopardy. He came onto the show as an executive producer last fall, I believe. It seems now for the express purpose of one day filling Alex Trebek's shoes. Before he was at Jeopardy, he was at The Price is Right. He was in a sexual harassment lawsuit from when he was a producer on The Price is Right. It was dismissed before a settlement was reached. The allegation in the sexual harassment lawsuit was a Price is Right model said that Richards fired her because she was pregnant from the show. So now he's the host of Jeopardy, not LeVar Burton, like it should have been. LeVar Burton got done dirty by the whole process, by the way. LeVar Burton guest hosted during the week of the Olympics when the time of Jeopardy was like bopping around because of NBC's insane Olympics schedule. And so not as many people watched it because not as many people knew when it was on. Like it was just moving around. It was super unfair. Mayim Bialik, who a lot of people also really liked as a guest host, will apparently be filling in occasionally. But I just think this is like the most milquetoast, boring, offensively boring choice. And, you know, I have big plans on what kind of an old lady I'm going to be. I'm cruising toward it. I cannot wait. And Jeopardy is part of those plans. I need Mike Richards to be out of there by the time I'm ready to be an old lady who watches Jeopardy. And I don't know how long I can wait. I wanted to be get into my old lady self within the next 10 to 15 years. I wanted to start my descent into that. And I need him gone before that happens. So that's what I'm feeling petty about. Alyssa, I wonder I'm sure you have Jeopardy opinions. What do you think?
You know, I have Jeopardy opinions. Yeah. Because Alex Trebek is the reason I even had any fun my freshman year of college. Amy, Dana, and Molly, if you're listening, you know what I'm talking about. We ruled the Billings Dining Hall at UVM when Jeopardy would come on. We always had our food, our pasta pronto, at the table in time for kickoff of Jeopardy. And I used to have nightmares before Alex Trebek got sick about Alex Trebek getting sick. And so the thing that was so dirty about what they did to LeVar Burton was that this new person, his negotiations had to be underway before that week ever aired. So that's fucking lame. And
they might have all had their contracts set up before they could even step foot on it.
Maybe. I don't know.
Like when you test, like when you test for a pilot, like everybody's testing has their deal written.
I like Alyssa's theory that it's a conspiracy.
I think it's a conspiracy. Because, and also I did watch quite a few of them, and Mayim also did a really good job and took it really seriously and was like the appropriate level of nerd, you know, and also was like loving it. Like Alex Trebek fucking loved it every day. That's the whole point of the show. He loved it. And this guy feels like he fucking plotted, you know, to like trick everybody and get it. So I hope that his ratings are terrible and they replace him, but that it doesn't tank the entire franchise. That is how I feel.
I'm not a Jeopardy watcher. I've only kind of followed this conversation loosely on Twitter because people were rooting for LeVar Burton. But what I can't understand is like this Mike guy has no name recognition and like no on-camera experience. And so it's one of those where like in the year 2021, we're really giving white men with no qualifications jobs still. It just feels off trend.
I thought it was Kramer from Seinfeld. I was like, oh, Mike Richards. I
hoped it was him.
Yeah. it's him. Like what a pivot.
Yeah, it just seems really weird. And I will say that the silver lining of this conversation, it is really nice to hear people talking about a man who is like nakedly ambitious with the same disdain that we usually reserve for nakedly ambitious women. I think feminism has finally won, that we are now equally mean to men for being like, you're just in this for the promotion. I'm in favor of that. I think we should give more scrutiny to mediocre white men who get jobs that they don't seem like they deserve.
I just think people want their Jeopardy host to remind them of their favorite fourth grade math teacher, it's just sort of just like affable and disappears and, and,
Right.
and I think that the truth is that LeVar is just too good for the show and too shiny, too wonderful. And the show just doesn't deserve him.
I've got a pitch for LeVar. And this. I want this show to exist. I want to will it into existence. Reading Rainbow, but for grown-ups, like adult Reading Rainbow, where we have people go in and talk about like books that they really liked, and LeVar hosts, and he gives like animated recaps of them. And every week I can watch a show where I find out about like 4 or 5 new books that I'm like, ooh, I'm gonna add that to my Amazon card, or I'm gonna add that to my IndieBound card, or whatever.
Yeah. Although if LeVar was my fourth grade teacher, I probably would have paid attention.